Want to learn how to use your new interchangeable knitting needles? Just curious as to how they work? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how to use interchangeable knitting needles. Hey, it's Yay for Yarn, and interchangeable knitting needles are my favorite type of knitting needles to use because they are the most versatile type of knitting needle. But unfortunately, it's rather common for people to have problems with their interchangeable knitting needles because they don't know the tips and tricks for how to use them. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to use your interchangeable knitting needles and what the different functions of these connectors are. So first off, let's look at what an interchangeable knitting needle is. So a circular knitting needle is just like this, except with an interchangeable circular. As you can see here, the needle tips are interchangeable. They can be attached and detached so that you can switch out different sized needle tips with cables or cords of different lengths. So with a circular knitting needle, you can knit in the round continuously, and your stitches, as you knit along, slide onto this flexible cord so that they are not limited to how much length you have on a straight needle, nor are they limited to the amount of space you would have on double-pointed needles. And with a circular knitting needle, you can knit back and forth and make flat pieces. You can knit in the round. You can even use the magic loop method to knit at smaller circumferences in the round. And there's even a trick for knitting socks where you can use two long circular knitting needles and kind of do a double magic loop and knit, like I said, very small circumferences in the round. So you can basically knit anything you want on a circular knitting needle. But with fixed circular knitting needles, the tips are permanently attached to their cords. So let's say you have a size 11 circular knitting needle that is 40 inches long. But then you decide that you want to knit a project in the round that requires a 24-inch circular on a size 11 knitting needle. So in that case, especially if you're not going to be using the magic loop method, you would have to go out and buy another size 11 circular in a different length for that project. Whereas with interchangeable needles, you only need one pair of tips in each size, and then you can just swap out different lengths of cables to make different length of circular knitting needles. So that is why these are the most versatile type of knitting needle and why I love to use them so much. I use interchangeable circular knitting needles for almost every single project I make. The trouble is that a lot of times when people are not aware of what you're supposed to do to connect these together, basically when they get a new set of interchangeable circulars, they realize that there's a little screw here and a screw hole, a threaded screw hole in the needle tip. And they notice that there's a screw there and that you're supposed to screw them on, and then they do that, just like that. And although that looks like it's securely connected, it's not. So then, if they just finger tighten it like that and then go to start knitting their project, then over time, as you're moving those needles around, they start to come disconnected because they're not attached all the way. And sometimes people think this is a flaw in the knitting needle quality. It's not. This is actually missing a step in attaching the needles. So yes, you can absolutely start them screwing on with your fingers, but there's one more thing you need to do to make them secure. So if you look carefully at this little connector here where the metal connection attaches the cord to the needle tip, you can see there's a little hole right there. And your interchangeable knitting needle set will come with this little tool called a cord key. Now they may have various types of stoppers or ends on them, or little handles that you can grasp, but the point is all you really need is this little pin. So this fits through the hole in your cable or your cord connector here, and what it's for is to give you something to twist against so that then you can tighten that needle tip very securely because you have something to twist against to tighten it all the way. And you might be thinking, okay, well, that's great, but then how do I get it undone? Because, you want it to stay attached while you're knitting, but then how do you get it undone? Because now that this is securely tightened, I can't unscrew this with my fingers. So what you do is you take that cord key when you want to detach the needle, you slip it back in there, and you now have something to twist against again to unscrew the needle tip. So now if I wanted to, I could grab another size of a knitting needle tip and screw this on. And again, with that cord key in there, you have something to tighten against so that it will not come untwisted. If you use this cord key and you twist it all the way and tighten it with the cord key, you will never have a problem with your interchangeable knitting needles coming detached from your cord. All right, so now let's look at the other functions of this little cord connector and some of the other things that make interchangeable knitting needles so functional. So this little screw that connects the cord to the needle is the main feature of interchangeable circulars that makes them so versatile. So let's say I were to decide that I want to use this needle tip on another project. Let's say I'm knitting along with this size 15 needle on both ends of my cord. And let's say I run across a pattern that I really like and I want to make right now that uses size 15 knitting needle tips. But my size 15 tips are on a project already. So instead of having to finish that project first and use these needles for a new project, I can put my current project on hold and pause working on it for now and take these tips to another project. So to do that, what you're going to do is slide all the stitches off of the needle tips and all the way onto the cord. Okay? Now we're going to unscrew the needle tips using that cord key. And then we're going to use this nifty little end cap. Now these look a little bit different from one brand to the next, but basically what it is it has the same screw hole as the needle tips, except it has a big stopper on it. So I can now screw this onto my cord here, and that will keep all of the stitches of my project held on that cord so they won't slide off. But what happens when you come back to this project that's held on your cord and you don't remember what needle size you were using? That's a problem. So what we can do to avoid that problem completely is when we go to put our end cap on the cord, we can first slide on a little size marker tag like this one. So this is marked, it's a little disc of plastic with a hole in it. It's marked with both the US size of the needle and the millimeter size. So now that I've removed my size 15 tip, I can just slide this little size 15 marker onto my cord with, of course, all my stitches held on this cord before attaching the end cap, and don't forget to tighten it with the cord key. And now when I come back to this project later that I've paused, I will know exactly what needle size I was using so that I don't have to worry about trying to figure that out. Now another really cool feature of interchangeable circulars is that you can make the cord on your needles however long you want. You are unlimited basically to how long you can make your cord. So if you want to knit a queen size blanket in one piece, you can do that by connecting multiple cords together. So this little connector right here has a hole in the middle for the cord key and 2 screw holes in the ends. So I'm going to grab another cord here and we're going to connect 2 cords together to make an extra long one. Now just for demonstration, I'm going to use a little short one here just to show you how to connect them, but in real life, if I was making a big project, then I would use multiple longer cables hooked together. So what I would do is attach this the same way I would attach a needle tip. You can see there's a hole in the connector here and a hole in this connector as well. So in this case, I'll screw it on with my fingers, and then I'll insert a cord key into both of those holes so that I can twist them in opposite directions to secure that connection. And then I can take the screw end from the other cord and screw that on. And you do have to kind of twist the cord around and around to do this once you've attached one to one end. But once you screw it all the way on, and of course secure it with the cord keys by using them to twist it tight, then you now have a much longer cord on your interchangeable knitting needles so that you can make a large project. Think about this. If you connected multiple 40-inch cords together, you could make a really huge knitting project. And if you like to knit lace or cables or other more complicated stitch patterns, then this next tip is for you. Sometimes when we're working with a more complex stitch pattern, we use a lifeline to help make sure that when we happen to make a mistake in our stitches somewhere, we can easily unravel back and fix it without having to drop a stitch and then pick it up in a complex pattern. So let's say we're making a lace project and we want to add lifelines to our knitting every, say, 8 rows. So one easy way to do that, let me go ahead and attach my knitting needle tip here. One easy way to do that is to take a thin but strong thread, kind of like a thicker thread, maybe a size 10 crochet thread, for example. And we would use that to thread through all of our stitches. But instead of using a yarn needle and slipping it through all the stitches across your row, you can actually save a lot of time in adding your lifeline by using this little hole in your circular needle to do it for you. So what you would do is take your lifeline string and slip the end of it through this hole in the cord. Slide it through, and then take the end and tie it to the length of the string so that it doesn't just slide out easily. And then you would knit across your row. And as you knit, your stitches will automatically slide onto both your cord and the string that's attached to your cord. So by the time you get to the end of the row and you slide your last stitches past the hole in your knitting needle here, then you will have a lifeline threaded through your entire row of stitches. And of course you want to make sure that string is plenty long so that when you go to untie it or cut it from this hole that you still have extra length of your string on both ends of your row. But then you could knit several more rows and then add another lifeline. And then that way if you happen to make a mistake, then you can just unravel back to the lifeline and not have to worry about trying to pick up all of those stitches correctly. So there you have it. Now you know all the best tips and tricks for using interchangeable circular knitting needles. Now I've tested a lot of interchangeable needles over the years, and I have narrowed all those needle brands down to 2 knitting needles that are my top picks. One that is my very favorite wooden knitting needle, and another that is the very best metal knitting needle that I've ever used. So if you want to learn more about the best wooden circular knitting needles, interchangeable circulars, and the best metal interchangeable circulars, I will link those videos down below. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you've ever tried interchangeable circular knitting needles, let me know how you like them in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, making sure you click the little bell next to the subscribe button to be notified of new videos. Thanks for watching.